I lost my period for 2 years and I want to talk about it. In this episode, I will be sharing with you my journey to get my cycle back after losing my period for 2 years. Yes, you heard it right. I lost my period for 2 years and I want to talk about it. So let me take you back to when and how it happened. If you listen to my early episode, I believe it was episode number 2, where I talked about competing and how I, for the first time, decided to do a bodybuilding show back in 2022. You will know that I lost my period. Pretty much, I started 16-week prep for my bodybuilding show and I lost period second week in prep. Back then, I had IUD and I had my cycle on time. Every single month, I got my period on time, no problems whatsoever. Started prep and lost my period second week in prep. Just so you have an idea, before I started prep, I was exercising about 5 times a week. Usually weekends I would have off. And then usually my average calories were around 2,700 a day, period on time. Started prep and my exercise went up, my calories went down, and I lost my cycle. I struggled for almost 2 years to get my full cycle back. And I want to tell you exactly what I did and how I found out that I got something called hypothalamic amenorrhea. Yes, it is such a hard word to pronounce for me, not anymore. But when I got diagnosed, and I'm going to talk about how I got diagnosed, I couldn't even pronounce this. I was like, what is this word? Hypothalamic amenorrhea. I've never heard of that before. So we can call it HA. So HA is a condition that can cause a lot of your menstrual cycle. Hypothalamic amenorrhea is when the hypothalamus, a part of the brain that regulates hormones, stops sending signals to your pituitary, I think I pronounced it right, gland to produce the hormones that are necessary for ovulation and menstruation. I'm going to talk about how that happened, but I also want to kind of tell you how the period stopped specifically for me. So I lost my period during prep. And after I competed, my initial goal, like most first time competitors, was that I'm going to do a proper reverse diet. If you don't know what the reverse diet is, it's pretty much progressively increasing your calories from being in a deficit for a long time and bringing you back to your maintenance calories, which in my case would be the 2,700. And prior to my show day, I was down to 1,400 calories. So if I would have done a proper reverse diet back then, I would go from eating 1,400 calories after the show to progressively start increasing my calories all the way to 26, let's say 2,700 calories. Now, the plan was to do that. However, as like I said, first time competitor, a lot of people, I believe, bodybuilders, competitors who steps on the stage for the first time are very overly excited about, oh my goodness, like I finally got myself to the best year of my life. I've been dieting for 16 weeks. I've been training so hard. So then when the show is done, you almost give yourself the permission to just go and eat whatever you can because you no longer have the show coming up. So that's something that happened to me and I'm not extremely proud of it. However, it just happened. And if I would ever, which I don't think it's going to happen, decide to compete again, I know for sure that my approach would be very, very, very different after the show, but it's too late. Now I'm going to explain what happened. So I step off the stage, had no period, obviously, right? And I gained probably, I believe I gained like 17 pounds in 10 days. Of course, it wasn't all fat. Some of it was, but most of it was water. And because I went from feeling super lean and shredded to all of the sudden putting on so much weight in like a week, I went through something called a post-show depression, where you're still pretty lean and in a good shape, but in your head, because you're used to seeing your body extremely shredded and muscular, you think you're fat. And that's what I've experienced. So because I haven't had a solid plan post show, I didn't work with coach after that, which is a big mistake. I put on so much weight in water and fat that I started back going to restrictions. So I went back to trying to eat less because I didn't want to gain a lot of weight. And I was bouncing from eating very little to eating a little bit more and over exercising to the point where I wouldn't allow myself to even have like rest days, because I wanted in my head to look the way I looked on the stage. And I didn't understand that it's just not possible. Like, you cannot maintain that lean look 12 months a year. It's just not possible. And because I didn't have the right guidance, the post show, I really struggled to allow myself to have rest days, to allow myself to eat more, to allow myself to put on some weight. And I've put on some weight, and it got me depressed and unhappy. I cried so many times. You guys, I cannot even tell you how many times I cried that time, like after the show, few months after. I just felt like I was fat, which is ridiculous. That to me is crazy, how our brain works when we don't see things the right way. So here I am trying to maintain that lean look. That wasn't possible. And for me, in my head, I just didn't understand that really well. So my period wasn't coming back because I wasn't eating enough food. And although I was eating more than I was eating prior to the show, I was still in a huge deficit, and my body wasn't recovered enough to bring my cycle back. So now I'm going to talk about how I got it back. So for kind of like a year, I was giving myself time thinking like, oh no, it's going to come back. I just lost my period from competing and now I'm just waiting. But I didn't understand that I wasn't doing the right things to bring my cycle back, meaning I still underate, below my maintenance. I was doing tons of steps. I was doing a lot of exercising, and I just wasn't doing the right things to recover, although I thought that I was. So that's why I highly, highly, highly recommend to work with a coach if you ever decide to compete. Don't think that competition is the end goal and you are good after that. The post show is as important as the prep. Just remember that. Please, please, please mark my words down. Remember this. This is super important, so you don't have to struggle like I struggled. So for like a year, I was giving myself time, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to get my period back when my body is ready. Well, I was wrong. Now, watch this. A year after, I go to Czech Republic, where I was born, and I'm going to visit my family. And I'm from a very small town, and there's no gym in the town that I grew up. So for 3 weeks around Christmas, I wasn't exercising because I didn't have access to a gym. And guess what? A day before Christmas, I got period. The strongest periods you can imagine. I was celebrating. I was like, how the hell this happened? I am so happy. Well, then I returned back to Canada with about 7 pounds extra because, you know, Christmas time, being with your family, my mom was trying to feed me. I had a good time. I ate a lot of food and I put on weight. So then I go back to Canada and I started under eating again. Well, I wouldn't call it under eating. I just went to a deficit again. And I started overtraining and I lost my period again. So then I didn't get my period for almost another year, where I only got maybe like one, which was kind of like, it's not even a full cycle. So I went to a doctor And I got some testing, blood work, and everything kind of came back normal. So my doctor told me, well, you might have PCOS. And I'm like, well, do I have a PCOS or do I not? Like, do you think I do have it? Like, how do we diagnose me? Like, how do we know what I have? I didn't really get a straight answer from the doctor, so I left the office. I was like, "Well, I don't really know what's happening," because I wasn't getting a clear answer from anyone. Then I started doing my own research, and I have found and diagnosed myself with HA, hypothalamic amenorrhea. I found a book called No Period, Now What? From Nicola Sykes. And you guys, that book opened my eyes so much. I've read that book and realized that that's me and that I have hypothalamic amenorrhea. While I was reading the book, I cried so many times because I realized that I caused my cycle to disappear by the things that I was doing. And I never believed that that would be me, especially when my mom, who always watches me, right, like on social media and stuff, and not once she says, Martina, why are you lifting so heavy? Martina, why are you exercising so much? And I remember those conversations that I've had with her, and I would be like, Mom, stop it. Like, exercising is good for me, right? And it just sounds crazy to me because obviously, like, I'm a nutrition coach, I'm certified, but this topic was something that I've never really had to dive into. So I remember those conversations with my mom, and I just thought that she doesn't know what she's talking about. Well, reading that book made me realize that, oh my God, my mom was right. I literally was overdoing it. And like I always preach to our clients, everything in moderation. I just wasn't leading by example in that case or in that sense. So now lost my period after coming back from Czech Republic. Like I've said, went to the doctor, never got really a clear answer what's happening with my body, got a bunch of testing, blood works, ultrasounds, no really specific results came back with anything. So I was like, whatever. Next year I go to Czech Republic again, and I am again at home celebrating Christmas, no exercising, and I got my cycle again. Second year in a row. That was absolutely crazy. Even my dad looked at me when I called him. I was like, Dad, like, I got my period. We need to go to the store. And he was like, I think you should come to check more often because clearly your body is loving it. I was like, you might be right. Wow. I came back to Canada and I went to my doctor and I said, listen, I do think I have a hypothalamic amenorrhea. I read on it. I did a lot of research. And this is the pattern. This is how I've got 2 full cycles. And it was always when I was in Czech Republic and I wasn't exercising and I was eating way more than I eat when I'm in Canada. Because in Canada, I'm always like, go, 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 trying to stay in a deficit, always kind of like stay lean. And in Czech, it's just more relaxed. Like I sleep more, I hang out with my family, I have a good time. I am less stressed because of I work, but I don't work as much. And all these things, my body is just loving it. And clearly I always get cycle when I'm back home. So then my doctor said, yes, you have HA. Well, that's very clear because it just the fact that you go to Czech Republic and you don't exercise and you get your cycle, it's just a sign that you don't have PCOS, because with PCOS, that wouldn't be like, that's just not a pattern. But looking back on those two years, you clearly have HA. So I started working with my coach, who I worked with prior to that, and he is amazing. I love him so much. And I've told him everything. And he was like, well, let's just go through a recovery. You cannot be over exercising. We need to up your food a little bit. And you just need to learn how to not overdo things, which was extremely hard, you guys. I can't even tell you, because I'm always on the go. And so I had to learn that. And I'm happy to say that I got my period back. After that, it took a few months, but I got my cycle back. Now recording this podcast in 2024, I already got my 3 cycles, and it seems like my body is back to normal, which I'm very grateful for, because I'm at a point in my life where obviously having kids idea crosses my mind, and like not having cycle is extremely stressful for women when you know that that's just a sign that your body is not healthy. Now, I want to talk about really the key points, what happened and why I lost my cycle for 2 years. So, hypothalamic amenorrhea, this condition, and you might struggle with that and you don't even know about that. And that's like a number one reason, honestly, why I'm recording this episode for you, because I want to spread the awareness of how over exercising and eating below your maintenance calories can negatively affect your hormones and your overall health. So how it happens, so this condition often occurs due like various factors, like I've told you, right? Stress factors, which includes excessive exercise, which means intense physical activities, and especially it happens in athletes, but not only, also women who just simply do a lot of exercises like HIIT classes at 45 Orange Theory, and they eat 1200 calories. Then low body weight, if you are trying to be as little as possible and lose as much weight as possible, that can really affect your overall hormonal health. Stress, emotional and physiological stress, can impact your hypothalamus and the ability to function properly, which for me, yes, like I do have sometimes stress job, right? Like I run business and that's not always easy. So I do have a lot of stress in my life sometimes. The causes of hypothalamic amenorrhea, you guys, are often tied to lifestyle factors. Like I've mentioned, your eating habits, eating disorders. I was also bulimic for 12 years. Extreme dieting, that can also lead to energy deficit. Physical stress. So like I said, doing crazy workouts, routines without any rest. So if you're not resting, if you don't have rest days, if you're not recovered, that is going to be an issue. And lastly, emotional stress, like life changes, anxiety, traumas, breakups. Like I went through a horrible breakup prior to competing. So I think that I was just accumulating all the stress and my body just wasn't really loving it. The symptoms of hypothalamic amenorrhea, HA, includes several symptoms. For myself, it was difficulty concentrating, absence of menstrual period for several months. For me, it was 2 years. Changes in libido, hot flashes or night sweats, which I haven't experienced, and fatigue. Those are the most common symptoms of hypothalamic amenorrhea. And that is pretty much, you guys, what HA is and how that happened to me and how I've learned my lesson the hard way, that less is more and not more is more, because overtraining and staying in a calorie deficit consistently is just not good. And I just want to say, guys, that you ladies who's listening to this podcast, I want you to know that having six pack is just not something that we should be trying to always achieve, especially if we are not athletes, if we are not competitors, because having six pack is just not a sign of being healthy woman. Like you need fat on your body in order to be healthy. When I was struggling to get my cycle back, my body fat percentage was below 20%, which is not like the lowest, but I was probably like 16%, which is really not a lot. Generally speaking, you want to be anywhere between 22 to 25% as a female, a healthy female, with your healthy hormones in place. So that's it. That's all, you guys. Ladies, if you listen to this episode, really, I want you to know that if you're missing your period, if you have absence of your menstrual cycle for more than a few months, please, 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 this is something you need to address. This is not good. That's just your body sending you signals that something is not right. and you need to make sure you go to the doctor, get your blood work done, get your hormones tested, and reflect on your lifestyle, how much you're exercising, how much you're eating, how your overall lifestyle look like, because there could be just a little things like focusing more on stress management, like focusing maybe on breathing, meditations, taking the time to go for nice walks. Things like that can make a huge difference. And I'm so big on these things now, because not having cycle for 2 years was horrible. And everyone always laughs, like my sister and friends, when they know that I got period, I send them messages like, oh my God, I got my period. And they're like, you're the first person that I've ever heard or seen to be excited. But then they also know why I'm so excited, because it's just a sign that my body is finally healthy.